تبارك الذي بيده الملك وهو على كل شيء قدير الذي خلق الموت والحياة ليبلوكم أيكم أحسن عملا وهو العزيز الغفور الذي خلق 7 سماوات طباقا ما ترى في خلق الرحمن من تفاوت فارجع البصر هل ترى من فطور ثم ارجع البصر كرتين ينقلب إليك البصر خاسئا وهو حسير ولقد زينا السماء الدنيا بمصابيح وجعلناها رجوما للشياطين وأعتدنا لهم عذاب السعير وللذين كفروا بربهم عذاب جهنم وبئس المصير إذا ألقوا فيها سمعوا لها شهيقا وهي تفور تكاد تميز من الغيظ كلما ألقي فيها فوج سألهم خزنتها ألم يأتكم نذير قالوا بلى قد جاءنا نذير فكذبنا وقلنا ما نزل الله من شيء إن أنتم إلا في ضلال كبير وقالوا لو كنا نسمع أو نعقل ما كنا في أصحاب السعير فاعترفوا بذنبهم فسحقا لأصحاب السعير إن الذين يخشون ربهم بالغيب لهم مغفرة وأجر كبير وأسروا قولكم أو اجهروا به إنه عليم بذات الصدور ألا يعلم من خلق وهو اللطيف الخبير هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور أأمنتم من في السماء أن يخسف بكم الأرض فإذا هي تمور أم أمنتم من في السماء أن يرسل عليكم حاصبا فستعلمون كيف نذير ولقد كذب الذين من قبلهم فكيف كان نكير أولم يروا إلى الطير فوقهم صافات ويقبضن ما يمسكهن إلا الرحمن إنه بكل شيء بصير أمن هذا الذي هو جند لكم ينصركم من دون الرحمن إن الكافرون إلا في غرور أمن هذا الذي يرزقكم إن أمسك رزقه بل لجوا في عتو ونفور أفمن يمشي مكبا على وجهه أهدى أمن يمشي سويا على صراط مستقيم قل هو الذي أنشأكم وجعل لكم السمع والأبصار والأفئدة قليلا ما تشكرون قل هو الذي ذرأكم في الأرض وإليه تحشرون ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين قل إنما العلم عند الله وإنما أنا نذير مبين فلما رأوه زلفة سيئت وجوه الذين كفروا وقيل هذا الذي كنتم به تدعون قل أرأيتم إن أهلكني الله ومن معي أو رحمنا فمن يجير الكافرين من عذاب أليم قل هو الرحمن آمنا به وعليه توكلنا فستعلمون من هو في ضلال مبين قل أرأيتم إن أصبح ماؤكم غورا فمن يأتيكم بماء معين
الله أكبر صدق الله العلي العظيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته الحمد لله الذي كفى والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد المصطفى وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا أطيعوا الله وأطيعوا الرسول أولي الأمر منكم فإن تنازعتم في شيء فردوه إلى الله والرسول إن كنتم تؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر ذلك خير وأحسن تأويلا صدق الله العلي العظيم وصدقه النبي الكريم ونحن على ذلك من الشاهدين والشاكرين والحمد لله رب العالمين. The topic chosen today has Hadith, its authenticity, and WhatsApp. No, it was not a search for a Friday topic for some eye-catching line, but WhatsApp is what was happening a few years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Initially, after he left this world, Muslims in love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will gather in Masjid al-Nabawi here and there and hear from people who were with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about him, about what he said, what he did, what was his time like. That was a very loving thing to sit and discuss the memory of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But then more people came to Islam, people who knew languages or not, and people from Medina went all around the world. As you know, Sahaba Ridwanullahi Ta'ala alayhim ajma'in, they are all around the world, they are buried there. And people heard from them and people will start talking. You know, the human memory are problematic. Somebody I know is sitting in front of me, I'm thinking, what is his name? And I meet the person all the time. So getting old, nothing unusual. Doctor says that happens with your age. Or some people are just simply careless. Oh, I heard somebody said this. And since that person looks like a person of position, authority, or means, so, oh, that person was telling me this thing. So pretty soon, everybody was saying a lot of things about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and people became concerned. Islamic scholars became a concern. What is going on here? Everybody is sharing, everybody is forwarding. So it was sort of WhatsApp type of situation in which scholars became concerned. And 200 years from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, little more than 200 years from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, maybe 250 years after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was born, Imam Bukhari was born. Imam Bukhari is called Bukhari because he is from Bukhara. Is he right? Where is Bukhara? Bukhara today is in Uzbekistan. It is about 2,500 miles from Mecca. People there don't speak Arabic. They speak a dialect of Turkish language. And from there, when he grew up as a young person, he also started hearing what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said. It became a very popular thing to people to sit and listen. And he became concerned about the authenticity. He learned a great deal. And when he was 16 or 18-year-old, his father died when he was even younger than that. His name, by the way, people know Bukhari and everybody refers to him as Bukhari. His name was Muhammad bin Ismail. His name was Muhammad. His father's name was Ismail, who himself was a scholar, but he passed away very young. So Imam Bukhari radiallahu ta'ala alayhi salatu, rahimullah alayhi, became concerned about collecting more hadiths. He wanted to master that art. So with his mother, while he was 16, 18, his mother and a brother, they started traveling around the world, Makkah and all those places. How much they traveled? They traveled about 18 years or so. By that time, he probably was close to 35, 38-year-old when he came back to Bukhara. And he collected 400,000 of saying. He says this, he said this, he collected a lot of that. And among those, he then sorted out close to 7,000 hadith or narration of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is authentic, and it is recorded in Bukhari. Several of those are duplicate also. For example, he heard from this person to that person to that person, but the same thing he heard from this person and that person and that person. So multiple chains of hadith, so he recorded them there. He was probably still in the process, because some of the places when I was reading Bukhari, some places he already had the chapter heading, and there's no hadith in there yet. So it seems to be a bigger project, but that's what we have right now, and consider most authentic book of hadith. Similarly, not very far from him, next to Uzbekistan is Afghanistan. That's where another great Imam Muslim was born. And Imam Muslim also collected a lot of hadiths. In some ways, the scholars consider Imam Muslim collection of hadiths actually better than Imam Bukhari based on their criteria. What criteria is important? So you see what was happening at that time, everybody was talking, and things were getting mixed up. Some people were just storytellers. Some people are simply storytellers, and they will just tell a story, whether it has any basis, any reference or what. So a lot of confusion came into what Rasulullah ﷺ actually said. And it was a serious matter, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Muslims, Atiullah wa atiur Rasul. Obey Allah and follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He told us, lakum, in the behavior and the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have a good example. Uswatun hasana. I mean, Allah in the Quran mentions many times about salat, timing of salat, and a little bit more. But everything else, how do you make wudu, how you stand up, pray, what you say in salat, All of that comes from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I saw my parents doing it. They saw their parents doing it. Hundreds and thousands of Muslims saw Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing it. So it's sunnah tawatur, mutawatira. That was not a problem. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, what did he say about agriculture or about this particular medicine? That's where whole lot of confusion on many, many areas came. So scholars went on focusing that, okay, now Hadith is very important to understand some of the Sunnah, although Sunnah is higher and greater than Hadith, but also, different principles which we have, for example, about riba, interest banning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran had very strong words about it, but its detail was not known. So what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says matters a great deal of this. So human beings are using their neurons, Allah has blessed us with the Quran and the Sunnah Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our brains. Brains have nearly 100 billion neurons. And it's an amazing thing Allah has blessed us with. So people started using and thinking based on their brain to authenticate. So 3 things came into being for authentication. I'll come back to WhatsApp, trust me. So Ilmul Hadith and Ilm Asma Rijal, 2 fields of knowledge developed. And in madrasa, I have studied that. It's an amazing thing. I remember sitting in the how Western civilization started. There was a class at the University of Chicago 41 years ago. I'm talking about a professor who is still in my mind stood up and he started talking. And he said, there is anything before 100 years is just a myth. History is not authentic. So I went and told him, but that may be true about European and Western civilization, not true about the Islamic civilization. And I shared with him Ilm Asma' Rijal. Ilm Asma' Rijal, when people were talking on WhatsApp, at that time without WhatsApp, he said that, he said that, he said Rasulullah said that. You'll say, okay, he said that, right? Who is he? Where does he live? What are his teachers? Is he known to be an authentic person? Does he even pray? Does he have taqwa? Is he a person of character? Or he known to be liar? And he says, A says, I heard from the B. And B says, I heard from the C. Well, let's turn it around. C says, I heard from the B, and B says, I heard from the A. We know about C to be an authentic person, but the B, so. Not a person of character. There is evidence of him lying. He says, I heard from A. That makes a hadith a da'if hadith. So Ilm Asma' Rijal collected names and life stories and the characters of people who are narrating hadith. Scholars were so meticulous, even those people who were messing up with the hadith, they still preserve their biographies. And then there was another ilm, the Ilm al-Hadith, and it has 2 major things. Riwayah and Diraya. Principle of Riwayah is connecting hadith from me to this person. Yes, my teacher of hadith taught me hadith. And my chain, if I remember correctly, will go all the way to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about hadith. He was Shaykhul Hadith in our madrasa, in our Darul Ulum. So whether the chain from me to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, each person in the chain is authentic or not, person of character or not, truthful person or not. If one person, one kadi of the one link of the chain is weak, scholars will look for same hadith, other narrations. If there are multiple narration, then they will still give a higher authenticity to that hadith, just because one person is weak, but the same hadith is said by this, and this chain, and other chains are sound. So this is the authentication through riwayah. Then second principle is diraya. And a diraya is whatever is being said, does it fit into the Quran? Anything which conflicts with the Quran will be rejected. Doesn't matter how authentic riwayah, chain of tradition, chain connecting is there, it doesn't matter if it contradicts Quran directly. And scholars who know Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's sunnah and hadith, they have come up with lot of rules. For example, if say there is a hadith that you give reading glasses, there were no reading glasses at that time. Ibn al-Haytham came up with the reading glasses far later. Suppose there was a hadith about giving reading glasses, you will have 100% of your sin will be forgiven, and you will enter the highest place of the Jannah. So one of the principal scholars have come up with a small good act, and it promises tons of reward. That's a one of tell sign that how come reward is greater than doing the fards. And it is, you become suspicious, you drag in further. So diraya is another principle, and there are a lot of rules. I encourage you to pick up a book. Pick up any book about what is ilm al-hadith, what ilm asma al-rijal. Is an amazing field of knowledge to authenticate everything. Scholars have done an amazing job. So not only good collection of hadith, but bad collection of hadith also. Hadiths which were invented by people, inauthentic. There are books of those. So what Islamophobes and bad people do, they dig into the hadiths which Muslims have historically already rejected and say strange thing about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And some fiction writers and some essentially anti-Muslim people, or those who have no knowledge of Islam, they dig into it with good intention or bad intention and throw a lot of garbage at Islam and Muslims based on something which Muslims have already rejected. So I would now move to use of hadith, proper way of using, and abuse of hadith, and then we'll talk about WhatsApp in next 7-8 minutes we have left. So I would share the full hadith. Don't share little bit of that hadith, and I'll tell you what is the problem, because that causes problem. And if you know Arabic, and scholars have said something about that, translate fully. For example, Tabligh Jamaat people are well-meaning brothers and sisters. They have this thing, Zakaria Kanthalvi, rahmullah alayhi, may Allah forgive his shortcoming. He has a book called Fazail Amal, and some people call it Tabligh Nisab also. I was sitting in a university, and Asr Salat, I went to the masjid. After masjid, people asked to sit down, and I also sat down, and all the people who have come to listen to my lecture sat down. Person said something about Ramadan. I say, Ya Allah, I spent, I have 3-4 degrees in Islam, I spent 7 years in madrasa, never heard of that. So, but I remained quiet because he was saying, reading from the book. After he was done, I asked, can I see what you read? And he gave me the book, Fadail Amal or Tabligh Nisab, the same name, same book. And I read in Urdu, he was reading in Urdu, he read absolutely correctly. Then I looked on the side in the Arabic, mashallah, 5 lines of that Arabic column was not translated in Urdu. who says this is Da'if Hadith and one of the narrator is found to be liar and all of those things. Subhanallah. Great scholars, well-meaning people make a mistake. And that's the university where now ilhad is increasing like crazy. So it is important to be careful. And saying in part sometimes could be intentionally abusive. For example, you might have heard of it. I have heard it many times. Paradise is under the shadow. Paradise is under the shadow of the swords. Well, Hadith is authentic, except people just say that line. And if you give full line, then it fits into the way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was. If you take it out, that is out of character for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to just say that paradise is under the shadow of the swords. It looked like he was warmonger and all that. That's what Islamophobe and racist type people presume. You know what is the full hadith, brothers and sisters? He says, do not look for a fight with the enemy. That's what he did. He didn't want to fight. Allah had to ask Muslim to stand up and defend. So hadith, full hadith is, do not look for a fight with the enemy. Beg God for peace and security. Beg God for peace and security. But if you do end up facing the enemy, then show endurance and remember that paradise is under the shadow of the swords. It's reported by Sahih Muslim. You see how the contextful hadith changed the meaning of it? One could be used by ISIS and Islamophobes, and you give full could be used by peace-loving people that they were looking for peace. They ran away from Makkah to Taif to Medina and all to Habasha looking for peace, finally established the peace sanctuary. So full hadith changes the meaning. So be careful on that. Astaghfirullah. So, alhamdulillah, alladhi kafa wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad Mustafa. So remember, the first principle of hadith authenticity is that it must not contradict Quran. If you are unsure about something, ask a senior learned scholar. Now, a lot of people are jumping to be, they're just fresh graduate from some madrasa and they start calling themselves mufti and alim and sheikh and all that, and very immature-ish. So it is very important to be thoughtful in this. Now, avoid giving partial hadith, since there is a risk of losing the meaning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had. And I like you to apply the same thoughtfulness to WhatsApp. People are saying that, oh, Allama Iqbal said this. And I'm reading that. Allama Iqbal cannot have that. People are saying, oh, Maududi said this. And it doesn't fit into the character of Maududi. People just saying things. So first thing I would say, brothers and sisters, don't forward. This forwarding and sharing culture, you have a responsibility to authenticate the source. Avoid if it might create a fitna. So in a certain country, politicians are fighting each other, and I see everybody's forwarding a lot of negative stuff. One of them were calling somebody, oh, that person is a Qadiani and Ahmadi. I wrote to that person. I said, do you know this personally? He said, no, I received from someone, so I forwarded. There, Rasulullah ﷺ said, if you just, whatever you heard, you say, that is a sign of a person who's a liar. So avoid that forwarding business. Somebody I respect a lot forwarded me 3 books. And I said, oh, if this brother is saying I better purchase book, because he never asked me to buy a book. Well, I buy a book, I mail it to my office because my wife is saying you got too many books which you haven't read yet. So I asked him, did you read this book and you're recommending? He said, no, I'm just promoting it. Another colleague will forward me articles, and since I have high respect for her, I will very thoroughly read. Then I said, what is this? Why did I waste my time? So I called her. I said, do you read before you forward? I said, no, I just thought it may be beneficial for you. I said, how come without reading you're forwarding? So here are a few principles I like to share with you. Identify who wrote the message. You see, Hadith narration, who's narrating, apply that methodology. Don't trust WhatsApp images and videos without a context. Some of those things are just create anxiety, nothing else. Don't spend too much time on WhatsApp, brothers and sisters. There is something you can do better. So don't forward WhatsApp messages that ask you to forward and do this, or if you do, you will get 10,000 rewards, and avoid that stuff. What is your gut reaction to that? If it creates ill feeling, dump it. You don't have to sort of keep doing forwarding that. Search trusted website to verify. People tell me, oh, in India, this thing happened. It was after Tarawih last Ramadan, I woke up one of my staff in the East Coast because it was such an important information. And we spent a lot of time trying to authenticate. It was about Modi. Although he's a bad guy, it fits into him, but it has responsibility in the eyes of Allah, in the eyes of people to authenticate. We couldn't find it anywhere. And that person is a scholar himself. So I called him. I said, I'm sorry, we did not use what you said because we could not find it anywhere. He said, let me search. He couldn't find it anywhere also. So this whole forwarding business, and there are a lot of hoax in there and things. So when Muslims face this phenomena, people saying Prophet said this, they went into the millions of these sayings. They came up with the Sitta, authentic books. And still there is a methodology applied to not every hadith of Bukhari, for example, is implemented. That's called fiqh, but that's a different topic. May Allah forgive us for not being careful about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. May Allah forgive us for not being thoughtful about our tongue. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, please forgive us when we are weak. Ya Allah, Ya merciful, Ya mercy giving Allah, have mercy on those people who have high level of anxiety because of all this WhatsApp and social media and media consumption. Ya Allah, give them comfort so they read Quran, they absorb themselves in the Quran, at least few minutes of Quran, brothers and sisters, every day. Let's make dua that we follow the path of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Path of peace, justice, fairness, and equity. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq so we always stand up for the truth, for justice, and authenticate things. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq so we raise our children with justice, peace, and fairness. Ya Allah, give us tawfiq to our children so they continuously remain on the path of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Muhammad kama sallaita ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Inna Allaha ya'muru bil 'adli wal ihsan wa ita'i dhil qurba wa yanha 'anil fahsha'i wal munkari wal baghi ya'izukum la'allakum tadhakkarun. Udhkurullaha yadhkurkum. Brothers and sisters, remember Allah. He promises He will remember you. And Allah keeps His promises. Let's keep our promises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala by following Allah and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I will head for Masjid for Jummah Salat. Jummah is only in Masjid. If you can go, be careful, cover your face, mask up, have social distancing. And if you are at risk or if you're allowed not to pray there, offer 4 rakat of Zuhr Salat at home. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.